What is the right way of instantiating objects in Magento? The framework provides a facility to create new objects via dedicated object factories. The purpose of a factory is to create instances of a specific class. And that is the whole difference between the Object Manager and a factory. The Object Manager instantiates any class, and a factory instantiates only one specific class. Instead of injecting the Object Manager, a factory is injected. The factory class name is the exact name of the class we want to instantiate, with the factory suffix appended to it. All factories have only one method called create, and it will always return a new instance of the subject class. This way, some degree of type safety is preserved, and static code analysis can be utilized in PHP Storm and other tools. Also, dependencies are clearly visible in the constructor arguments. And as a nice additional benefit, we don't even have to write the factory classes ourselves. The Magento framework will automatically generate them for us. For the factory auto-generation to work, we only have to depend on the factory class, and we have to follow the factory naming scheme. That is the base class name, and then factory appended to it. Let's try this out in the REPL, but first, let's check if the factory exists, because currently PHP Storm here is telling us undefined class something factory. You will see it will be auto-generated when it's needed. And I'm passing false here to prohibit the autoloader from being triggered. So currently the something factory doesn't exist. Now we'll instantiate our factory dependency class using the Object Manager. And now if we call class exists again, the factory exists. This is also visible in PHP Storm, where the class something factory is no longer highlighted as non-existent. Let's call the getSomething method. Yay, and as expected, a new instance is returned for each method call. So this factory generation worked for any class. So even if I declare a class on the fly, like here, there we go. The factories were generated in the directory generated code. Here's the foo factory. And here's the something factory. In older versions of Magento, before version 2.2, the generated classes were written to the directory var generation. So if you are working on an older instance, you might still encounter the generated code there. So this is how factories work in Magento 2. But before we wrap up this video, one last note. Since the release of Magento 2, there is a rumor that factories cannot be generated for Magento framework classes. That might have been the case at some point in time before the release of Magento 2, but it certainly is not true currently. Factory generation works fine for framework code. So for example here in Magento framework, I'll just take any class, copy a reference, and now I want to create a factory for this class that will be generated on the fly. So That worked fine. A future video will cover code generation in Magento in more detail. But in order to use factories in your code, this is pretty much all you need to know.